Welcome to day 227. We're in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Really, we're just going to be in Ezekiel today. Jeremiah is more of the same. And if you're sitting here thinking, I can't wait for this description of what we're going to talk about today because you read your reading, I'm only going to point out a few things. Now, what am I saying? First of all, this reading, Ezekiel chapter 1, is just an outstanding reading and a description of God. And we don't get a lot of that in the Bible, so you should mark this so you can read through it over and over again and try to get a picture of this. And I Googled images, and there's lots of paintings you can look at, and none of them kind of struck me with what the description that I'm reading to be accurate. I mean, they had the four beings and the different faces and the wheels, but it wasn't what I had imagined. So before you look at the images online or any pictures of it, try to read this carefully and get in your mind what you think it looks like. And read it carefully. Don't read it quickly. Read it carefully, because this is pretty important, a description of God, which we don't get a lot of that. And then look at the pictures online. It is quite amazing to see what everybody else thinks they're seeing when they read this. So I do want to point out a few things in here. I've underlined a couple things. I mean, the whole chapter is marked for me, but I want to point out a few things that I thought are important to note. Verse 14, and the living beings darted to and fro like flashes of lightning. I wanted to point out that this is not an aircraft in the future. Here's why I'm saying this. People believe in aliens. They believe that there isn't a God. They believe that the description in the Bible are beings that live in a different planet, and they come and visit us. And all these descriptions can be made out to be mechanical things that have been made and beyond our technology. And that's where we get all the technology that we have now, is that the aliens are giving it to us. And I want to point out a couple things in here. And first of all, that's absolutely ridiculous. They dart to and fro like flashes of lightning. Boom, 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 wherever they want to go. Now, they're not turning, okay? They stay the same direction, and they go to and fro wherever they want to. And it's like flashes of lightning. We have nothing like this. Okay, now that doesn't prove that there aren't aliens. I'm just saying that the Bible is absolutely 100% correct. It's true, and there is a God, and we need to not listen to fortune tellers and liars and mediums and psychics, and realize that Ezekiel, the people back then in the Bible didn't have electronics. They didn't have printing presses. They didn't have a lot of things that we have today. But they're not stupid people. Okay, they write. They understand what's going on. And he's describing this the best he can. All right. So darting to and fro like flashes of lightning. We have nothing that even is close to that can do something like that. The wheels sparkled as if made of beryl. Each wheel had a second wheel turning crosswise within it. Okay, that's, sounds like a gyroscope. The beings could move in any of the four directions they faced without turning as they moved. The rims of the four wheels were tall and frightening, and they were covered with eyes all around. Okay, now you got to get this picture that this is God showing himself, coming in the clouds of heaven, showing himself to Ezekiel. And Ezekiel, I mean, think about how big this might be. It doesn't have to be big. God doesn't have to be a giant, this mammoth of a being. It doesn't have to be like that. So I want you to get this in your mind right now. God is God. He's not an alien. He doesn't live on a different planet. And if you want to really understand and convince yourself of this, that God is capable of all these crazy looking things, I want you to Google images of sea creatures, real sea creatures, and you're going to see things that you've never seen before. And then I'm going to say, I want you to, without letting someone see the picture of what you're looking at, I want you to describe it to that person. Your husband, your wife, whatever. I want you to just try to describe that to that person. And let's see if they can draw a picture that resembles what you're saying. After you've described it, you don't get to go back and say, well, I said this. No, you just say what you're looking at, and they have to write it down. You don't get to keep adding things to it. We don't get to go back to Ezekiel and say, is there anything else? And see what happens. And the thing is, God has made some crazy looking creatures, and that's just in the ocean. Inside our own bodies, we have microscopic things that are amazing. And that in itself should tell you that God is totally capable, a being, God, is totally capable of having different things, different beings that he's created that we haven't seen yet. So I want you to get that through your mind and get solid with this thought that we don't need aliens to give us technology. We don't need aliens to save us, because God is totally capable of doing and creating all these things that we're reading about. Verse 22, spread out above them was a surface like the sky, glittering like crystal. I underlined this because in Revelation we see a surface being described as crystal. And then later on in Ezekiel 10:1, we also see that. Verse 25, as they stood with wings lowered, a voice spoke from beyond the crystal surface above them. Verse 26 and beyond. Above the surface was something that looked like a throne made of blue lapis lazuli. You're going to see God's throne described like that another time. And on this throne, high above, was a figure whose appearance resembled a man. Here is the most important part of this chapter. Understanding a description of what Ezekiel's seeing of God. From what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like gleaming amber, flickering like a fire. Try to imagine that, okay? A figure whose appearance resembled a man. From the waist up, a flickering fire, okay? How? I'm not sure. But remember, we're made in God's image. Now, we're not made of fire. But again, God is an amazing thing. And from his amazing being. And from his waist down, he looked like a burning flame shining with splendor. So all fire coming forth in his image, okay? All around him was a glowing halo, like a rainbow shining in the clouds on a rainy day. Well, that's pretty cool. You got this flaming figure, and around that is a halo, like a rainbow. And what an amazing thing. And a sea of blue lapis lazuli, of like crystal glass. This is what the glory of the Lord looked like to me. What an amazing thing. And I want to end on one thing that is a little bit different than that. But I want you to understand that Ezekiel is just like, what just happened? And he's being told, you got to go and do all these things for me, and they're going to hate you for it, but you got to do it. And so chapter 3, verse 12 through 14, then the Spirit lifted me up, and I heard a loud rumbling sound behind me. And he transports Ezekiel to the Kebar River. He took me, lifted me up and took me away. I went in bitterness and turmoil, but the Lord's hold on me was strong. Yeah, you're not going to get away from God's hold. Then I came to the colony of Judean exiles in a Tel Abib beside the Kebar River. I was overwhelmed and sat among them for 7 days. So there's another number 7 there for you, which I think is amazing that is mentioned. So he sat there for 7 days. Didn't sit there for a day, 3 days, 12 days. He sat there for 7 days. Again, I think at some point in time, as we close this out, we're going to have to look at all the 7s at the end of all of this next spring sometime, and decide, why. Not that we're going to be able to figure that out, but it is an amazing thing how often 7s are used. I'm on my 3rd paper of 7s. Now it's handwritten. but you can see that's the front side, and there's the back side, and then I just started my third page here of all the 7s. It's, again, what is it important? Not really, but we may find that it is important when we actually do a study on it. Pretty cool. So that's your day 227. See you tomorrow.